The storm warnings had started at noon, scrolling quietly across the small television mounted in the corner of Rosie's roadside grill. Most customers ignored them. In Montana, snow was a season, not a surprise. But by Sham ke 4 baje, the sky had changed. It turned the color of bruised steel, heavy and watchful. Wind began to rattle the diner windows. The neon, open, sign flickered like it was unsure of its own promise. Clara Bennett noticed. She always noticed. Not because she was anxious. Not because she feared the worst. But because she paid attention. That was one of her habits, observe first, react second. By Sham ke 6 baje, the regulars hurried home. Truckers cancelled orders. The highway patrol officer who often stopped in for pie shook his head grimly. This one's building fast, he said. Clara nodded and refilled his coffee without spilling a drop. She had worked at Rosie's for 12 years. Same booth cushions, same cracked vinyl stools, same bell above the door. Her life moved in rhythms, wipe the counter clockwise, stack plates by size, smile before speaking. Small disciplines, invisible habits. By raat ke 8 baje, the storm hit. Snow didn't fall, it attacked. Wind roared like a freight train tearing through the valley. Power lines groaned. Headlights outside bled into white oblivion. Her manager told her to close early. Clara counted the register, tied the deposit bag, wiped the grill one final time, and slipped on her faded brown coat. Before turning off the lights, she glanced around the empty diner. See you tomorrow, she whispered out of habit. Outside, the cold slapped her cheeks instantly. Her old Ford pickup protested before finally starting. She gripped the wheel and drove slowly, tires crunching through thickening snow. The highway ahead looked wrong. Too many lights, too still. As she approached the bend near Miller's Hill, she realized what she was seeing, a line of luxury vehicles stranded along the shoulder. Black SUVs, long sedans, one bright red sports car half buried in snow. She slowed. Most people would have driven on. She considered it for half a second. Then she remembered something her mother used to do. Every winter, her mother kept extra blankets in the trunk, just in case. Not because something always happened, but because something might. Preparation was a habit too. Clara pulled over. Wind nearly tore her door off its hinges as she stepped out. Snow hit her face like needles. She trudged to the first vehicle, a sleek black sedan with more than her entire house. She knocked firmly. Inside sat a man in his late 60s, silver hair perfectly styled despite the chaos. He hesitated before lowering the window an inch. Yes, he asked, controlled but strained. You won't make it through the night in here, Clara said plainly. Engine freeze. My place is close, small, but warm. He blinked at her like she'd spoken another language. Do you know who? No, she cut in gently. And it doesn't matter. Behind him, another car door opened. A woman wrapped in a designer coat stepped into the snow, heels sinking instantly. She gasped at the cold. More doors opened. 15 people in total emerged from 5 stranded vehicles. Wealth radiated from them, even under layers of snow and stress. Expensive watches, tailored suits, polished confidence now cracking under uncertainty. One of them, younger than the rest, checked his phone repeatedly. No signal, he muttered. Clara raised her voice over the wind. My truck can only take 3 at a time. The rest will have to walk. It's less than a mile. They looked at each other. These were people accustomed to commanding boardrooms, moving markets, influencing governments. Yet now they stood waiting for direction, from a waitress in worn boots. The silver-haired man nodded first. Lead the way. The walk was brutal. Snow reached their knees. Wind shoved them sideways. One man slipped unclasped. Another tried to carry a leather briefcase before finally abandoning it in the car. Clara stayed steady. Left foot, right foot. Breathe through your nose. Keep moving. Habits again. She had walked this road every winter since childhood. When they reached her house, its porch light glowed faintly through the storm like a lighthouse. Inside, warmth greeted them immediately. The house was humble, crocheted blankets draped over couches, family photos lining the hallway, a wood stove crackling with orange defiance against the cold. Clara moved without panic. Boots by the door, she instructed gently. Coats on the rack. I'll get towels. No one argued. They obeyed. In the kitchen, she filled pots with water and set them to boil. Tomato soup from cans, bread on a skillet, butter melting into golden pools. The billionaire stood awkwardly in her living room, absorbing the unfamiliar setting. No marble floors, no assistants, no security, just warmth. Arthur Kane, the silver-haired man, watched Clara closely. You're not afraid, he asked as she handed him a mug. Of what? 15 strangers in your home. She shrugged lightly. If I waited to feel brave before helping people, I'd never help anyone. That silenced him. Another woman stepped forward. We were at an investment summit, she explained, almost defensively. We control companies with. Clara smiled kindly. Tonight, you just need dry socks. A ripple of quiet laughter broke the tension. She handed out her late father's flannel shirts. The sight of powerful executives wearing oversized red plaid was almost surreal. They ate grilled cheese sandwiches cut into triangles. One billionaire stared at his plate. I haven't had this since childhood, he murmured. Clara's movements never slowed. She checked the stove, adjusted blankets, refreshed tea. Arthur studied her. You've done this before, he observed. Not 15 at once, she admitted. But storms bring travelers, and travelers need help. Why? He pressed. She paused for the first time. My mama used to say, don't practice being successful. Practice being useful. Success comes and goes. Usefulness stays. Silence filled the room again, but this time it was thoughtful. Outside, the blizzard screamed against the windows. Inside, something shifted. The billionaires began talking, not about stocks or mergers, but about childhood memories. About first jobs. About parents who worked double shifts. Layers of identity peeled away. Clara didn't lead the conversation. She simply kept the fire alive. Around midnight, she laid quilts across the floor. She gave up her own bed without announcement. She dimmed the lights. Before sleeping, Arthur approached her quietly. You saved our lives tonight. She shook her head. Storm would have passed eventually. Perhaps, he said, but not everyone would have opened their door. Clara blew out the last candle. I didn't open it because you're important, she replied softly. I opened it because that's who I am. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, 15 billionaires slept on a waitress's living room floor, wrapped not just in quilts, but in the quiet power of a habit practiced for decades. And none of them yet understood how much that habit was about to change their lives. For a moment, she forgot about the storm. Then she saw them, 15 of the most powerful people in America, sleeping on her living room floor under her grandmother's quilts. One man snored softly, another clutched a pillow like a child. The woman in the oversized flannel shirt had curled near the wood stove for warmth. They didn't look like billionaires. They looked human. Clara quietly stepped over them and went into the kitchen. Coffee first. Always coffee first. The familiar sound of it brewing filled the house. Then eggs on the skillet. Toast popping. Butter melting. The smell of morning wrapped around the room like sunlight before sunrise. Outside, the world was silent. The storm had passed. White snow covered everything like untouched paper. Clara carried a mug of coffee onto the porch and froze mid-step. At first, she thought she was dreaming. Because the quiet wasn't quiet anymore. It was vibrating, low, distant, growing louder. Engines, dozens of them, no, hundreds. She stepped further onto the porch, squinting against the bright reflection of snow. And then she saw it. Her narrow dirt road, normally empty except for the occasional tractor, was completely filled. Black Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Lamborghinis, armored SUVs, chauffeur-driven Maybachs, security vehicles. The line stretched so far it disappeared into the horizon. 135 luxury cars. Helicopters circled slowly above, their blades cutting the morning air. Clara's coffee mug trembled in her hand. Behind her, the front door creaked open. Arthur Kane stepped onto the porch beside her, now wearing his tailored coat again, somehow restored to his powerful presence overnight. He followed her gaze. Our teams regained signal at subah ke 4 baje, he said calmly. We informed them of our location. Clara blinked. That's for you. He looked at her. No, he said quietly. That's because of you. Doors began opening in synchronized motion. Drivers stepped out. Security teams lined up respectfully but kept their distance. Assistants held tablets. Media vans waited at the far end of the road, but none dared approach without permission. The other 14 billionaires slowly came outside, stopping dead when they saw the spectacle. One of them whispered, "This looks like a presidential convoy." Arthur turned to Clara. Clara Bennett, he began, his voice steady but deeply moved. Last night you sheltered 15 strangers without asking for names, status, or reward. She swallowed hard. Anyone would have. No, interrupted the media mogul softly behind him. They wouldn't. The oil tycoon stepped forward. We built empire by calculating risk. You acted without calculation. The tech founder added, we invest in innovation. But you invested in humanity. Clara felt overwhelmed. I just made soup. Arthur gave a faint smile. Exactly. He signaled to one of his assistants, who brought forward a thick leather folder. Arthur opened it carefully. Last night, as we sat on your living room floor, something became clear. We spend our lives optimizing systems, scaling companies, increasing margins. He paused, but we forgot to scale compassion. He handed her the folder. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were official documents, property deeds, architectural plans, legal filings. At the top of the first page, the Ashton Ridge Community Foundation, fully funded, a new regional hospital, a business incubator center, a vocational school for trades, scholarship endowments for every graduating senior in the county for the next 50 years. Infrastructure upgrades, small business grants, total commitment $2 or 3 cents. Clara couldn't breathe. This can't be real. It's very real, said the venture capitalist. And it's just the beginning. Another billionaire stepped forward, a woman known for turning struggling companies into global giants. You reminded us of something we used to know, she said softly. Before private jets, before stock tickers, before security details. Clara's eyes filled with tears. I didn't do this for money. Arthur nodded. We know. That's why you deserve it. She looked at the line of 135 luxury cars. Then at her small wooden porch. Then back at them. What happens now? She asked quietly. Arthur smiled. Now, we go home, and we change how we live. He turned toward the others. Every quarter, we meet, not to discuss profits, but impact. They all nodded, not as executives, as people who had been humbled. News cameras in the distance began broadcasting live. Within hours, headlines exploded across the country. Waitress shelters 15 billionaires during blizzard, they respond with $2 or 3 cent investment. Social media erupted, but Clara didn't watch any of it. Instead, she looked at Arthur. I still have a shift at the diner, she said simply. For a moment, there was silence. Then Arthur laughed, deep, genuine laughter. Of course you do. One by one, the billionaires approached her, not with handshakes, but with something more sincere. Gratitude. When they finally entered their waiting vehicles, engines roared to life in perfect unison. The convoy slowly pulled away, leaving deep tire tracks in the snow. The helicopters lifted. Silence returned. Clara stood alone on her porch again. Same house, same boots, same sky, but the world had shifted. She went inside, washed the breakfast dishes, changed into her diner uniform, and drove to work. When she walked into Rosie's roadside grill, her manager stared at her. Clara, have you seen the news? She tied her apron calmly. Storm passed, she said. Roads clear. Customers began filling the diner, curious, excited, whispering. Clara poured coffee like she always did. Smile first, serve second, listen third. Her habits hadn't changed, because that was the real power. Wealth didn't change her. Recognition didn't change her. Opportunity didn't change her. She had practiced kindness for so many years that when the biggest moment of her life arrived, she didn't rise to the occasion. She simply acted like herself. And sometimes, that's more powerful than 135 luxury cars combined.